How was your adult revenge on your childhood bully? Story 1. After I finished high school, a girl who bullied me relentlessly for years messaged me on Facebook saying a bunch of awful things. Facebook was new at the time. We all added anyone we knew. I just screenshotted the messages and posted them to her wall. Then a bunch of her friends messaged me asking if I was okay. I got my revenge and didn't have to stoop to her level. Story 2. A kid that bullied me in high school ended up addicted to crack or meth. Not sure which. I saw him 10 years later as I was leaving a drive-thru and yelled his last name. He turned and I saw the scratch marks on his face and a big burn-type gash in the middle of his lip. I asked him what had happened and he told me he got kicked out of his home. Instead of laughing at him or belittling him, I handed him the bag of food I just bought for myself as well as my cigarettes. He almost cried because according to him never in a million years would I have thought that after all the I put you through, that you'd help. I told him we were stupid kids and happens. I visited him once a week and just talked with him and kept telling him to get off the drugs. I moved away a short time after that so I didn't know what had happened to him. One day, I got a friend request from him on Facebook. He kicked the drug habit and was working as a barista for one of those corner coffee shops. He is now married and living a life worth living. At the end of the day, no matter how much grief he put me through, he was his own worst enemy and anything I could have done to him or said to him was nothing compared to what he did to himself. I'm glad he's better and living a better life. Story 3. Not my bully, but my best friends. Kinda kept in touch with the entire high school class through Facebook once it came out. This asshat asks if he can use me as a reference because we got similar degrees and ended up in the second field. Adult him seems like a sham, it's all fake. My high school best friend moved to Europe because of this guy. He can't change that much, so I agreed to meet him for drinks and see if he changed. 10 minutes into the meetup and he's telling me about cheating on his wife with girls right out of high school, so of course I said yes. Only had 3 calls I guess before he caught on, but I made sure I told the truth. Story 4. Only 3 of them that I really know of. My elementary school bully and I eventually became close friends, and we're still close, gaming together online despite the distance, and our significant others are close friends now as well. Another, a girl in high school who always treated me like I ran into years afterwards at a coffee shop nightclub weird combo thingy. I hear my name called out, turned to find this living nightmare of my past and was surprised when she threw her arms around me and gave me a huge hug. We caught up for a while, and I asked her why she seemed so excited despite all we went through. She apologized and said that she was a bad person for never giving people a chance, and was glad that we seemed to get along now. The third was a jock that had been pretty cruel through most of middle high school. One day, out of nowhere, he sits beside me in class during a project and starts asking me how I've been. He asks me if it hurt me when he'd call me names or push me around, and I was honest, told him that of course it did. He was quiet for a while and then apologized for how he'd treated me, said that it was wrong for him to bully others. A week later he shot himself in the head on the front lawn of his parents' house. Of all the things I've done or not done in my life, I will always regret not going to his funeral. At the time I was confused and scared and didn't know what to think, but it still doesn't sit right with me, so really no revenge here. We grew up and realized that life was way scarier than anything we'd been through as kids. Not really on topic I suppose, but something that I wanted to share. Story 5. My best revenge was to just keep on being myself. This girl in high school would criticize me on everything, call me names and pick up fights with me for no reason. She eventually got kicked out of school. We met when we were in our early 20s. She started off nicely with the usual "how are you, what's been happening?" Turns out she hadn't even changed a little bit. "Oh yeah, want to be a teacher? You'll probably make a miserable one. I wouldn't send me kids to your school ever." That's when I realized that I was just so over her and her bullying, and that there was just no hope for her to realize what she did was wrong. It gave me some sort of satisfaction. Story 6. Not so much revenge, but I got an insane amount of satisfaction from seeing that they all lived up to the expectations set out for them to become single, unwed mothers by 24. Story 7. I graduated from high school in the 80s. I had grown up poor, but when my mom remarried, she married a guy who did well for himself, so when we moved into his house, I was a poor kid suddenly going to a school full of rich kids. One of them in particular was a girl who was really stuck up and such a. She had a very imperious attitude and generous parents, while my mom, there was no way she was going to allow us to behave that way. About 6 years after high school graduation I dropped out of college, was living on my own in a tiny apartment and working as a waitress, of all people to show up at the restaurant and be seated in my section. I asked a couple of waitresses to take the table but they were busy. Finally I realized what I would do. I would take on the role of my life. Win an Academy Award. I went to the table and pretended I'd never met her before in my life. She kept insisting I must remember her, right? She kept saying her name and I nailed the performance. "I'm so sorry, I just don't know, I'm trying, I believe you, yes I went to that school but I'm so sorry I don't remember you," and so on. She was flabbergasted. I kept overhearing her say to the people she was with, "I can't believe she doesn't remember me." That day I learned that to be forgotten is, for some, the ultimate slap in the face. Story 8. I was pretty fat as youngster but people still found me attractive. This bothered my bully so much that any time she would bully me about my weight. "Oh, I love those jeans. How do you find them in your size?" Taking sneak pictures of me in class and putting them online, or forcing me to kiss another girl at her sleepover then telling everyone I was a lesbian. It was great. Fast forward 10 years. I'm starting a career I love, lost a substantial amount of weight, and am living far away from my small-town upbringing. I go home to visit my mother, and who do I see walking around the grocery store? Hair thrown up in a ratty headband, extra 30 pounds on her hips and looking like a complete mess. I knew I could ruin her right there, but I didn't. I simply put a big smile on my face and said, "Wow, motherhood looks great on you." The fact that she had to trick someone into getting her pregnant after a drunken night at the local watering hole, and now has 4 stepkids before 25, makes me realize that her bitterness and hateful attitude has served her more revenge than I ever could. Story 9. My bully hit on me at some bar years after he bullied me. I knew who he was immediately, but he had no idea who I was, so he kept going. Finally I asked, "Do you know who I am?" And he said no. I said, "Him so and so, and you made my life a living in elementary school, and I want an apology." His face dropped and he apologized profusely. Said that he was a huge in elementary school, etc., etc. Not gonna lie, it felt good. Story 10. Well, does revenge as a child count? When I was 11 there were 2 bullies who would mess with me all the time. They were a couple years older. This heavy-set kid named Frank and his taller and meaner friend. I forget his name. One day I was out riding my bike at a park. They had stopped me. One was holding up the front of my bike, while Frank was hitting me, trying to knock me off the bike. At that exact instant my brother, 64, 220 pounds, was driving by. He quickly stopped the car and ran over. He picked both of them up by their shirt collars, one in each hand, holding them each about a foot off the ground. He said something like, "You mess with my brother again, and he'll bash both your heads together." Got it. He dropped them both. They fell, then quickly got up and ran away. They never bothered me again. At that moment I felt that, yes, there is justice in the world. Story 11. I have Tourette syndrome and was bullied relentlessly in early grade school. One day in the winter I had had enough, so I threw a jagged block of ice at my bully's face, knocked some teeth out, and he needed stitches. I almost got expelled. Worth it. Story 12. I was bullied for a lot of things, primarily for being overweight and being nerdy. A lot of my bullies are now also fat, or have noticeably put on weight, while I've started losing. One of them is a drug addict, one was arrested on child pornography charges, one is in an ongoing custody battle, and his ex's family are rather violent. Others just made bad moral choices, such as becoming a gold digger, drinking regularly, or just continuing to harbor ill feelings against me. Story 13. A kid that bullied me in high school actually gave me a black eye once and got suspended for it. Messaged me on Facebook apologizing for everything he did to me back then. I told him it's okay, you were just young and didn't know better. I eventually got a drink with him one day to see what he was up to, and he broke down on me. Started talking to me about his alcohol problems and how he was self-destructive. He was getting kicked out of his mom's place and had no job. Me being the sap, I offered him a job at the restaurant I was managing at the time. This was about 2 years ago. Fast forward to 3 months ago, he is now a kitchen manager at the same restaurant, and he asks me if I'd like to get a drink with him. Dude bought me and my girlfriend a ticket to Colorado, and told me he will never be able to pay me back for how much I helped him, but he is at least in the position where he can try. Colorado was fun. Got really high. Story 14. They got a huge full back tattoo. The ugliest tattoo I have ever seen. I saved the JPEG on my desktop and named it Revenge, and I look at it occasionally if I get sad. Story 15. I worked as a newscast director for my local TV station a few years back. Part of the job was making show graphics maps, full screens, OTS over the shoulders, etc., for each newscast, including for the local Crime Stopper segment. I prepped the mugshots of no less than 3 people who gave me in school for air during my tenure there. That always managed to put a smile on my face. Story 16. Not really a bully, but my turd scum of an ex-girlfriend. She broke up with me after coming back from a trip and telling me at school the next day she cheated on me with some random dude she met online. We're both 21 now, and she's got a 3-year-old kid and still lives with her mother. Last month, I was at a Kroger buying flowers for my current GF. She's amazing BTW, and turd scum is with her non-baby daddy boyfriend. Dude looks at me walking down the aisle with a nice bouquet of flowers and says, "Hey, maybe I should buy you some flowers like that guy is doing for his girl." The look of utter shock and disdain on her face was priceless. Walked by her with the biggest smirk on my face. Best part was I was all fancied up because I was about to surprise my GF with a date night. So I'm dressed in a polo and slacks, and Turd's chimney choker has his pants around his thighs and looks like he hadn't bathed in a week. So satisfying. Story 17. So I have a friend who sometimes catches up with my high school bully and gets his new number. My friend gives me his number, and then I spend the afternoon signing him up for gay dating sites and some weird Craigslist. I'm told he has had to change numbers about 20 to 30 times in the last 3 years. Story 18. I have not taken revenge at all. I have moved away and left it behind as much as I could. Now I just watch him waste his life from afar with a content smile and see how not having education is kicking his. He is losing friends and eventually will end up alone. Not that my life is so amazing, but I am doing better than him. Story 19. I wasn't really bullied growing up, by the way, but I do have a story. Guy who bullied my cousin and even brainwashed his then girlfriend and turned her against him was paralyzed from the neck down in an accident and will never have use of his body again. My cousin told him right to his face that he got what he deserved. Story 20. Not me, but my 9-year-old daughter has to deal with this girl in her class that is a bully to everyone, though she is especially mean to my daughter. Luckily most of the time, the kids all have her back and she theirs. The teachers are aware of her issues and try their best, but she's sneaky. My daughter is type 1 diabetic, and this girl likes to tease her. She does lots of things, but is really mean about it. She told her that her feet will get chopped off due to beat us and other horrible things. One day, she was waving a big chocolate chip cookie in her face, telling her how she can't eat stuff like that because she's a freak. My daughter had enough. She got up and slapped the girl across the face. And the cookie went flying too. She yelled, "Leave me alone." The whole lunchroom went silent. The girl ran to tell the teacher, and the kids cheered. She came home and told us because she felt badly about it. The girl told the teacher, crying of course, but several students also told the whole story. The teacher told my kid matter-of-factly, "Don't do that anymore," and yelled at the girl and made her stay in from recess. Since then, this girl gives my daughter a wide berth. I do not condone this behavior, but it was hard to keep a straight face when we were telling her that it was the wrong way to resolve things. Story 21. I had my bullies approach me on bonfire night when I was about 17. They came and said how sorry they were that they made school horrible for me, etc. I told them to go themselves. I persevered and became quite popular in school while they faded into obscurity for being dicks. Story 22. Finally, an AskReddit question that sparks an immediate memory. When I was a child, my parents weren't rich, not impoverished, but definitely not people who could afford to throw money around. As a result, we spent probably 10 years worth of my childhood living in a mobile home park on the rough side of town. I remember one year we lived there were exactly 4 murders in the entire state. 2 of them were in my neighborhood. So in a neighborhood like this, of course, there are neighborhood bullies. One of them was named Isaiah. Let's say, over the course of a couple years, probably when I was around 13 to 14, he made my life. I couldn't go to the park playground for fear of Isaiah being around, so I spent a lot of time lonely, bored, and scared in my own house. If I'd known about Reddit at the time, I probably would have spent a ton of time on it. Fast forward near a decade, I've been a correctional officer at the state prison for a few years. Doing very well for myself, own a couple cars, bought my first house, and life is good. Isaiah hasn't even crossed my mind since I was a kid. However, one particular day at work, they were short-staffed, so they threw me into segregation, aka the hole, where bad inmates go to be punished where I don't normally work. I go to a walk around to check all the cells, and lo and behold I see a familiar face in one of the cells. I check his inmate ID and sure enough, it's this pizza from my neighborhood when I was a kid. I smiled and kept walking. Story 23. I never really got revenge but worked my off at uni and ended up working on movies, got married, had a kid and have my own house, so that was revenge enough that he didn't dictate my life. I then found out that he was a school counselor for unruly children and thought to myself, he's turned his life around, good for him. Story 24. I was about 10 when this neighborhood tortured me. The final straw was when he took a down power line and whipped me in the back with it while I skated by him rollerblading. He left welts and it hurt for days. About a week later I biked to his house knowing his parents were at work still, so it was just him and his sister home. He had an archery set up in his backyard and I took his bow and arrows. I waited behind a tree until he got outside and shot that little with his own right in his chest and then went for his face. While he was doubled over I kicked him and spit on him and told him if he ever came near me again I'd kill him, and I meant it. With every fiber of my 10-year-old being. After the day I knew what I was capable of and was never afraid of anyone again. His parents came to my house and talked to my grandpa who knew what was going on and held it down for me. I didn't get in trouble for it. As an adult I obviously handle conflicts differently, but that is my best bully revenge story. Story 25. Karma eventually got them. 1 died of brain cancer. A car accident got 4 of them at once a couple years after graduation. 3 died, the other lost his legs, and the teacher who I hated got arrested a couple years later for a student. Story 26. Plan on doing it someday when I have money. I plan on paying off their debts just to make them feel horrible for treating me like and saying I won't amount to anything. Story 27. There was a guy who was popular but also a bully at my high school. I ran into him at a bar about 15 years after. He was super cool and the nicest guy ever. I was talking with his wife and I mentioned the bully thing and she said everyone she meets from his high school tells her that story. He even acknowledged it and apologized. Apparently he was going through a very rough time in high school and he had since learned a lot and life had calmed way down. It made me feel really good about not holding on to things like that. Story 28. Moving away from the rather depressing town and making a relative success of my life. Kid who hasn't thought about me for 20 years. I didn't, the universe did. It wasn't exactly protracted enough or abusive enough to be called bullying. But when I was 11, I had a friend I went around with and she tried to introduce me to her larger circle of friends. This one girl who was basically the alpha female would not stop ripping on me for not being cool enough. She threw fits about how uncool I was because I went to drama class instead of other, cooler hobbies. She went on and on about how I was uncool because I didn't go to the same cafe they went to. Fast forward a few years, she ended up a teenage mother. Story 29. I was heavily bullied in middle school, and one time I actually ended up getting my kneecap and surrounding muscles semi-permanently damaged from a poor game of kickball. He couldn't hit me in the head with the ball like he wanted to, so he tripped me by a base instead. The following year he tried to attack me in school, and got suspended for the rest of the year. Now he's only 20, in prison for probably 20 to 30 years for rape, arson and theft, and has had I believe 2 children. His now ex made a post on Facebook that members from the prison managed to tattoo rapist across his face. My revenge was done for me. Bittersweet. Story 30. Got taller than him, got better looking than him, got in better shape than him, got overall bigger than him and trained in MMA for 2 years to learn how to fight. have a hotter wife than him, make a lot more money than him. Best revenge is doing well for yourself. Jeff, unsatisfying, but at least I blocked him on Grindr. Story 31. I got bullied pretty badly in middle school. Mostly the topic of abuse that I'm a guy that plays the flute, sometimes other things, but mostly the flute. I'm not really into revenge. It's petty and doesn't really get anything done. However, what I did get to do was hang out with a whole bunch of chicks 5 hours a day for marching band in high school. Revenge, no, but I certainly was not gay like the bullies implied, which honestly, if I were, why would it matter? Story 32. The girl who was cruel to me at every opportunity. Her husband cheated on her and they're divorced. Ordinarily I feel badly for someone in this situation, but she was so unbelievably nasty, it just makes me laugh. Story 33. A few of my childhood bullies have passed away to reckless driving or drugs, so revenge not needed. After going to a different high school than my middle school bully, I was a year out of HS and going for a bike ride, saw the middle school bully on his bike, going the opposite way. He yelled something to me, so I ignored and kept on my merry way for about a mile, until I noticed he was following me, fast. I wasn't the same pushover I was in middle school, so I pulled over and waited, as he hopped off his bike and violently thrust his hand out to shake my hand and apologize for ever being a. Basically said he used to hang with a bad crowd through middle school until senior year and he regretted a lot of stuff he did as a kid growing up. Asked me how my high school years were, what my after HS plans were, and explained after his father passed away he had an epiphany he was going to the National Guard to get away to help fund college, and wanted to become a psychologist to help kids throughout high school deal with harassment. I talked with him for a good half hour and we parted on friendly terms, ran into him a few times over the years and about 4 years later he seems to be on his way to achieving what he said and is very active in my hometown community. Didn't need to get revenge, glad to see someone grow up and make something great of themselves. Story 34. There was a popular boy in middle school who was a total to awkward nerdy me, he'd call me names, talk to people within earshot of me about how ugly I was, and would try to physically hurt me during our PE class all the time. We went to the same high school, but I had no classes with him, so I pretty much forgot about him. Well, a couple years after high school I ran into him at a bar. I'm a lot prettier and less awkward than I once was. He hadn't grown more than a couple inches since middle school, and the face that was cute when he was 12 did not handle the testosterone surge of puberty well. He was acting like a nervous teenager and kept saying, "Wow, you really look different." While we chatted a little, he would also not shut up about how he was in the Navy and how awesome he was because he was serving our country and protecting me from terrorists. He finally asked me for my number and I gave it to him. He texted me the next day asking me on a date and I replied, "Oh, nah." It wasn't my most shining moment of maturity, but it felt good to look down on that little both literally and figuratively. Story 35. There was a fat that always used to bully me in high school. He was bigger than everyone else so he would use that to his advantage to intimidate people. He would bully me and pretty much anyone who he thought he could get away with. Fast forward to a couple of months ago, I see him on Facebook, fatter and balder than before. Which, that itself made me happy. But I see him posting on his FB wall about his new job and trying to solicit business. Scrolling down his posts I see that he is constantly posting political BS along with filthy language etc. So, I emailed his company with a link to his FB page and said that I was offended and would not do business with a company that has employees like that. A couple days later I see that under his workplace section on the About page was blank. I think I got him fired. Not gonna lie, feels good. Story 36. I was only bullied once by one guy in a one-off occasion. It's okay though I stuck it to him when I bought Mega Man 5 from him for only 10 in 2002, now that is worth bank. Story 37. Living the good life. All of my bullies are losers now, the kind of people they would bully actually. I think seeing me forces them to see that, making them even sadder and more pathetic, so the real answer is living the good life and being a smug. Story 38. Was bullied from elementary to high school by an increasing amount of students only due to one's opinion. It started small and ended up by me in my grade 10 trying to end it all. Got things resolved and 3 years out of high school now I am friends with not all most of them and majority of them have apologized for being so quick to judge without getting to know me. What it is, but most people get a bad rep on me for no reason, then when they know more about me over time we become friends. Currently own my own business now as of recently and sold 2 cars to people who still hate me for no absolute reason. I made sure to install a hidden toggle switch that will turn the right or left blinker on and off. He recently got a ticket and bitched about it all over FB about how cops are jerks. No harm no foul, just 90 out of his pocket and more in mine when he brings it back to get fixed. Story 39. I wasn't bullied, it was more like I did the bullying. I bullied this kid in middle school so I could look cool. The kid and I lived in the same apartment building. Once I reached 8th grade though I was thinking when did I become such a monumental piece of. I stopped insulting him after that. I actually ended becoming good friends with him. Story 40. He became a traffic cop. I work for a very high-end auto OEM. Went home the other week with a very flashy car and guess who was working the inspection sticker checkpoint? We didn't acknowledge each other but I know he recognized me. He looked pissed. I was pretty happy about the whole thing. He even had to pull me to the side because the way we register our cars they don't have inspection stickers. Story 41. I was never really bullied in high school. However there was this one named Matt that for some reason, really didn't like me and was always mean to me for no reason. He played basketball and acted like a total king because he was pretty good at it. and I guess me being a skateboarder that didn't care about team sports, I wasn't cool enough in his eyes. I was cool with everyone, even most guys on the team, but this guy was always a total to me and other people. On top of that, because he was a good player on the HS team, he never got in trouble. Needless to say, I hated him. After high school, he ends up at the same university as my best friend a couple hours away. He had been kicked off the team for failing a drug test for steroids. As per usual, he was a total miserable, but this time with a bad cocaine and steroid habit and no friends. A couple years ago, I get a call at like 2 a.m. on a Tuesday night. It's my best friend. He's quite loaded but somehow sounds very ecstatic and calls me to tell me Matt had been talking and being a total to this one guy at the bar and ended up sucker pooching him and breaking his nose because the guy wanted nothing to do with him. Turns out the guy he hit had a brother who was a member of the local Hells Angels charter, and from what I heard, this guy didn't around. My friend was outside across the street smoking a joint and sees Matt walking out to 7 to 8 jacked up dudes just waiting for him. He got the living beat about him and ended up in the hospital for 3 days. My friend just had to call me then and there. I felt quite giddy and slept quite well that night. Story 42. No revenge at all, and it was not a bully of mine, just a guy I used to hate in high school. He hated me back, naturally. I just saw him a few months ago when I was visiting my folks back home. His appearance said everything, even felt sorry for him. Story 43. Not a direct revenge, but pretty satisfying just the same. I was pretty fugly in middle school and most of high school, in middle school especially. These two asshats used to pick on me. They'd push me around, sneak up behind me and screech in my ear. Typical middle school bullshit. The worst thing though was just after our ed class one day. We had been discussing ways to prevent rape. On my way out the door after class ended, I overheard them saying, "At least kiddo 22 will never have to worry about being raped, haha." It was like a double whammy to me. Not only were they joking about the prospect of me being raped, they were in the same breath joking about how ugly I was. I hated them so much. Fast forward to the past few years, and one of them is in jail for the 3rd time for petty theft, while the other one has like 3 different kids, none of which he wanted, and is living in a trailer. I feel bad for the GFN kids, but not for him. Story 44. I looked them right in the eye and said, "Congratulations on being the owner of 2 timeshares." Boy did that show them, selling them 2 condos on prime real estate that they have to share for the low payment of just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're American. So they have to share with a whole bunch of other people, 8 families, and I get 500 per share I sell for some Eastern European dudes who chain smokes 2 cartons of smokes daily, walks AKs and MP5s, gives us good food, always smiling, made me sign a document saying I have no relation to other companies nor them, and best of all gave me a new identity for each of the places I traveled to, and obviously, I'm over-exaggerating. I'm really getting back at my bully by being alive and somewhat happy. Story 45. Girl I played travel fast pitch softball with used to bully me and another girl for being tomboys and being nerdy. She was a talented pitcher from a hick town who thought she shat gold, but her personality was 100 grade A all the way through, plus she thought she was hot when in reality she was a fish-eyed horseface. She ended up going to a D1 school, acted like she always did, got kicked out, and then went to a new school to start over again. Did this a few times until she wore her welcome out everywhere. Last time I heard she was living in the same town that thought she was hot with a boyfriend who isn't going anywhere either. Meanwhile, I'm a consultant making bank and my other friend is now in vet school. We got our revenge by being better people and kinder souls. Story 46. Turns out I was the bully. I felt terrible when I found out. Everyone I picked on I had considered a friend. I thought of it as good-natured ribbing and making fun of each other. One guy finally got his revenge when he told me I was the bully in high school and saw the realization come over my face. He forgave me. I still apologize to people as I run into them. Story 47. When I was 13 to 15 years old, I was bullied a lot by the boys in my class for being flat-chested. I didn't even fit into a AA cup bra and they made me aware of that by calling me names, calling me a boy, calling me ugly, etc. Then something magical happened between ages 16 to 18, and when I turned 20 had E-cups. Hormones are the best revenge. Story 48. She tortured me for years as a teen, even broke my nose at one point. We moved away when I was 16. I stayed in touch with one friend and her family. The bully ended up marrying my friend's brother. Years later, my friend gets married in Vegas and her whole family is there, including her brother, minus his wife, my bully. Yup. The snot out of my bully's husband. The next day, we did a group photo at the Wee Chapel of Love and I sat right next to him, leaning towards him with a giant eating grin on my face. The pic is on display in 3 family homes. I love that she sees it whenever she visits. We became best friends. Now we bully each other on a routinely basis. Story 49. Some kid in 7th grade got his jollies off for making fun of me for being small, so during a PE baseball game this little would not stop heckling me. He was on first base and I figured once I got a good hit I would just truck the out of him. He never saw me coming. Looking back on it I probably could have really hurt him. I did knock the wind out of him. He never talked about me again. Edit. Oh, adult revenge. I really don't know what happened to him. Story 50. I wasn't a bully and I never bullied anyone, but I didn't step in when everyone else was bullying Scott. I wish I had though because Scott eventually got his revenge. Story 51. Age 22-ish. I was working as a clerk at the local job center employment office in the UK. I got to see 2 of my ex-bullies come through as customers. The first one even had a baby in tow, with no sign of a partner. I didn't say as much as I would, never did anything about it, was always polite and respectful. But seeing them avoiding my eyes and pretending they didn't recognize me was about as sweet as can be.